Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, April 28th, 2019, and we are live tonight. We have a jam-packed show for tonight. It's a lot going on. All right, and I just saw Avengers 4 Endgame before coming here to the studio, so it's a fantastic movie, and it has done $1.2 billion worldwide, if I saw that correctly, this weekend. Okay, so go check that out as well. All right, so on tonight's show, we have a lot to talk about. There's a story coming out of Houston, and it deals with a Houston principal named Carlotta Utley Brown. Okay, and with this story here, you have a situation where she's a new principal at this high school, James Madison High School in Houston, Texas. And there was a problem with parents coming to the school to see about their children, etc., and wearing just anything, wearing do-rags and shower caps and pajamas, all types of stuff, okay? Things that, your parents should have taught you when you were younger were unacceptable. Okay, so she instituted a dress code for parents coming to the school, not for the students, but for the parents, okay? And it's understandable. She says she wants to set, she needs the parents to help her set a good example for the children. And also she comes from a pretty well-performing school as well, okay? So we're going to talk about this story. There's been a lot. I saw a lot of articles about this story this past week. I did a Facebook Live broadcast dealing with this also. And we aired that a number of times on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. So a lot of people have been talking about that. All right, so it then also, last weekend we were on break for Easter. And the Mueller Report came out the day before Good Friday, okay? And that was strategic. Trump and Attorney General William Barr, his hand-picked Attorney General, wanted to bury the Mueller Report because they know it's damaging for Trump. Now, Trump hasn't read it, okay? But because he doesn't read, but he hasn't read it. But Attorney General William Barr knows what's in the Mueller Report. And he knows it is not flattering to Trump. So last Sunday, even though we were on hiatus here, I did a Facebook Live broadcast. I did the African History Network show on Facebook, and it's on my YouTube channel also, so go check that out. Because I went deep into the Mueller Report. I've been reading through it. I've read a number of articles dealing with it also. And it is very damaging for Trump. It does not exonerate him from coordination, okay? Because what the Mueller team was searching for, what they were looking for was criminal conspiracy, not collusion. So when Trump keeps saying no collusion, that's a lie, because collusion is not a legal term. And on page 2 of the Mueller Report, Robert Mueller explicitly says they were not investigating collusion. So how can Trump then claim exoneration for something that they said they were not investigating? Okay, and then also they talked about Mueller said even though they could not establish criminal conspiracy, the standard they were looking at was, he was saying that they could not establish an agreement between the Trump campaign and the Trump administration and the Russian government. They cannot establish an agreement either tacitly or expressed. However, he went on to say that there was overwhelming evidence that they were operating in a mutually beneficial manner. So what's that about? Then In Volume 2, Volume 1 is dealing with the Russian interference. They fairly detail the Russian interference into the 2016 campaign, okay? But then in Volume 2, they deal with obstruction of justice. And Mueller laid out at least 10 instances of Trump and the Trump campaign engaged in obstruction of justice. Now, he was operating based upon the memo from the Department of Justice stating that a sitting president cannot be indicted. Okay, and he's basically leaving up to Congress. He talks about this in the report. He's basically leaving up to Congress, and that deals with the impeachment powers that Congress has. So as more and more people find out about what's in the report, it becomes more and more damaging for Trump. So you have Sarah Huckabee Sanders, you have Kellyanne Conway continue to lie, and Rudy Giuliani continued to just tell blatant lies to protect Trump. But as more and more the truth comes out, it becomes harder to justify this. Now, most Americans are not going to read 448 pages of the report. I'm still getting through it myself. A lot of this stuff I already knew because I've been studying this going back to 2015. But I'm going to get through the full report, and there are a number of articles that have been written about it as well. But we're going to talk some about that tonight. We'll deal with the Mueller Report and break it down. And New York Times has a really good article. The Mueller Report is 448 pages long. You need to know these 7 things. ThinkProgress.org has an article dealing with they have an article dealing with the obstruction of justice. Okay, and we know obstruction of justice was one of the articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon. And I said, going back to January 2017, I firmly believe Trump is going to be forced to resign from office, just as Richard Nixon was forced to resign from office August 9th, 1974, after he was reelected to a second term. See, people forget Nixon was reelected in a landslide election in November of 1973, and most Americans were against impeaching Richard Nixon. But then you had the Watergate hearings, and they got to hear from John Dean, White House counsel. They got to hear from John Ehrlichman, his domestic policy advisor. They got to hear from the witnesses in these in the actual Watergate hearings, and that changed the tide for Nixon. That was one of the things that changed the tide, and also the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against him. I think it was 8-0 that he had to turn over the Nixon tapes as well. But what changed the tide largely for the public was the Watergate hearings. And you have many people, those who were former prosecutors in Watergate, Jill Wine-Banks, Nick Ackerman, who are contributors on MSNBC. They've been talking about you have to have open hearings, fact-finding hearings, where you get to hear the witnesses, not just Robert Mueller, not just William Barr, but you get to hear from White House counsel Don McGahn. You get to hear from others as well. Okay, and that will definitely change the tide, because people will get to judge the witnesses for themselves, and they'll get to hear them speak and tell exactly what happened. This is what happened with Michael Cohen. When Michael Cohen testified the second time and came clean and talked about various things with Trump, talked about Trump inflating his assets when it came time to apply for a loan, deflating his assets when it came time to file taxes. When Michael Cohen testified again and provided a lot of corroborating evidence, corroborating documentation, that helped to turn the tide for Michael Cohen and what a lot of people thought about him. So all this is taking place. And with the 2020 election coming up, and the first debate for Democrats is in June of 2019, we have Joe Biden, who just joined the race this past week, and everybody was expecting Joe Biden. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Will he get the nomination? How will things transpire? We saw the form the forum for women of color that took place this past week as well, moderated by Joanne Reed. And we saw Senator Elizabeth Warren did very well. Senator Kamala Harris did very well. Bernie Sanders didn't do so well in front of this group of women of color. Okay, so we'll talk some about the Mueller report, and then I wanted to talk about this topic a couple weeks ago. Then a new article came out dealing with how schools keep teaching the history of slavery and civil rights in ways that traumatize black students. Schools keep teaching the history of slavery and civil rights in ways that keep traumatizing black students. All right, and there was an instance that happened in Wisconsin where there was a gym teacher. The gym teacher was teaching a class, and at Shorewood Intermediate School in Wisconsin. And this was a class that was, the assignment was to research different games children play in different parts of the country. And this teacher told African American students they would help them research slave games, games that slave children played. Right? So this caused some firestorm. You had an instance of a Monopoly-like slavery game called Escaping Slavery, which is a board game to teach about the history of the Underground Railroad. This was in Wilmington, North Carolina in March of 2019. So you have a number of instances that keep happening. We saw them in February of 2019. We see them in March. We saw them in April. Okay, of teachers incorrectly teaching the history of slavery. So we're going to talk about that some in the second hour, because there's a 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery, Teaching Hard History American Slavery. And this study documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools across the country, and it also documents what needs to be done to correct that. How do you more correctly teach the history of slavery, not just in schools with a predominantly African American student body, but in schools all across the country. Okay, this is important. The history of slavery has to be correctly taught in schools all across the country. So this article talks about that in the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center. I use that a lot when I teach. If you see some of my Facebook Live broadcasts throughout the week, I've been doing a number of them. And I've been talking about this study. Okay, so we'll deal with that in the second hour. And then also, there's another topic I wanted to get to as well. So we'll talk about the Mueller Report, and there's one more topic I have to look at. Don't remember what it was, but we'll get to that also, okay? We'll go to the phone lines when we come back from the break. Oh, the Ancestry.com ad. Yeah. All right, so I did a Facebook Live broadcast back on April 20th dealing with this Ancestry.com ad that portrays a slavery-era romance between a black woman and a white man. Okay, I asked, what the hell were they thinking? Ancestry.com has come under fire for this. It was numerous articles written about this. People were talking back on social media, saying that it was insensitive to the history of slavery and the relationship of white men to enslaved African women. Now, I don't know if you've actually seen the ad. In the ad, it's not exactly clear whether she is a slave or not. It appears to be in the South, probably in the 1800s. You had a small percentage of free African Americans at that time, and the white male is not. We don't know whether he's a slave master or not. Probably not an abolitionist in the South at that time, because it was most of the abolitionists were in the North. It was extremely dangerous for white people to be known abolitionists in the South. Okay, that is extremely dangerous. But we'll talk about that ad also, and some of the backlash. They have removed the ad. It was actually it aired in Utah Okay, and the ad aired in Utah, and then also it was targeted to a Canadian audience as well. It was on their YouTube channel. It was targeted to a Canadian audience. Okay, but you had a lot of African Americans who were disgusted with the ad. So we'll talk some about that also. All right. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay? So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. We deal with a number of different topics here on the show. We deal with current events and history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. We're coming up on a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You listen to 910 AM Superstation, the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
One underwent hernia surgery.
Can you say one more time, sir?
All right, stand by, guys. We'll be back in a minute.
All right, I'm going to put you on hold, all right?
Hey, I emailed you the information for tonight's show, man. Put that in the Facebook Live broadcast. And then I emailed you the first link. It's at the bottom of that.
Yeah, I got the...
It's from ABC News, ABC Channel 13. Yeah, we're going to go to that, because that's about the teacher. Let me grab a pen. Bag is... Watch the chairs.
Got 1 minute.
All right. I don't know why this computer's running so slowly. Damn. All right, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. We'll be back in a minute. Okay. Why is it so loud?
30 seconds.
All right. How's everybody doing? Okay, we have Tyrone watching on Facebook. Share this broadcast. We'll be back in
10 seconds.
We'll be back in a few seconds here.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, April 28, 2019. And we're live. We're back after being off last week. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All my DVD lectures are there. It connects you to our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. And connects you to our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. The African History Network. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page right now. And I want to let you know, coming up Saturday, May 11th, 2019, I'll be speaking at the International Institute, located at 111 East Kirby Street in Detroit, for the Pre-Mother's Day African Ball, the Pre-Mother's Day African Ball. And this is, I'll be speaking on ancient Africans in America and great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. There'll be a dinner, there'll be dancing, African and vegetarian food included, cultural dancers and drummers, African attire, prizes for the best attire. There'll be music performed by the Odu Afrobeat Orchestra. Tickets are $40, and for more information, please call 313-717-5578, 313-717-5578, or 313-603-1340, 313-603-1340. Okay, we'll get this up on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. All right, so this past week, thegrio.com had articles about this, blackamericaweb.com as well, Associated Press, Washington Post. So you have this high school teacher, Carlotta Utley Brown, in Houston, Texas, okay? And she came from Peck Elementary School. She was there at Peck Elementary School for 14 years. She's a new teacher here at this high school. And she noticed a problem of parents coming to the school for various reasons, coming into the school, not just pulling up outside the school, picking up their children, but coming into the school, various reasons, wearing all type of clothing, do-rags, wearing curlers, sagging pants, wearing shower caps, all different types of things like this. And what happened was on April 8th, you had a parent named Jocelyn Lewis, okay? And Jocelyn Lewis tried to enroll her daughter at the school on April 8th. And she showed up wearing a Marilyn Monroe t-shirt, but was wearing it like a dress. It was kind of a little long t-shirt that came up to her thighs. It was a t-shirt, and she was wearing it like a skirt or a dress. And she had her scarf tied around her head. Now, according to the reporting, she was in the process of getting her hair done. But when she went to enroll her daughter at the school, she was told that she couldn't come in because of the dress code for parents. And she asked to see where it was written that that was the dress code for parents. At the time, that dress code was not on the website, okay? And she ended up calling the school, she called it the district office, I think it was, okay? So because she would not leave, the people in the office, and I don't know exactly the ethnicity of the people in the office, but because she would not leave, the people in the office ended up calling the police on her. All right, so then this became a news story in Houston, and then this became a big story. So the next day, April 9th, a letter was sent to all the parents, sent home to all the parents, explaining the dress code, okay? Now, ABC Channel 13 caught up with Principal Carlotta Utley Brown, and here's what happened.
Romo here outside Madison High School. It's the place where the new parental dress code has been instituted, and a lot of parents are not happy about it. They say they're grown and they don't need advice from school administrators on how to dress. Well, we sat down with the principal, Carlotta Utley Brown. She's only been principal here at Madison for 29 days, but she's been an administrator for decades, and she says she's had this same policy at other campuses before. A part of it is she says that she doesn't want to distract kids if parents show up wearing leggings or shorts that she thinks are inappropriate, or even bonnets on their hair, curlers in their hair. She says part of it is that distracts students from learning, but another part of it, she says she wants these kids to have a good example, an example for academic excellence.
Quite surprised by the attention. Very, very much so surprised by the attention, but it's been different. It's been different. And so I'm surprised. I thank those who are supporting me, and those who are not, I hope that they will understand what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the parents say if this were an HISD-wide policy, that would be one thing, but they feel singled out just for this campus. They also say maybe there's a racial element that they feel about it because of Madison High School's demographics. Well, Carlotta Utley Brown says no matter what, this policy is not going anywhere. She says that it's already had good results, and she also says she's got a lot of positive feedback from all over the world, people who say she needs to stick to her guns.
Okay, so that was from ABC Channel 13 there in the Houston, Texas area. They have an article, Madison High School Principal Responds to Adult Dress Code Controversy, from Friday, April 26, 2019. Okay, so the student body at the school is 58% Hispanic, 40% African American. To many parents, KTRK there in the Houston area reported the dress code appeared to be laden with racial undertones. For one thing, it did not apply to the whole school district, just to one high school with the majority, quote unquote, minority and low income students. However, in the letter that went home to parents, part of it said that we are preparing your child for a prosperous future. We want them to know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate for any setting they might be in. She also talked about how she looked at the parents as partners in the education of the children as well and needed their support. Okay, so I've done a number of different Facebook Live broadcasts dealing with this, and there were, if you talk to a lot of teachers, they'll tell you stories about parents just showing up to school wearing anything. Okay, now in the case of Jocelyn Lewis, at the time that she showed up at the school, that was April 8th, the policy was not on the school's website. Okay, Jocelyn Lewis had asked to see a copy of the school's dress code policy, but school officials reported he did not oblige. Instead, they called the police department. Jocelyn Lewis told KPRC TV. Okay, it's going to be the next day that they're going to send out the letter to parents. Now, it appears that this was the first time the parent Jocelyn Lewis was at that school. In all the research I've done on this, I haven't read that she was at the school prior to April 8th. She was enrolling her daughter in school here. She removed her daughter out of another school because of a bullying incident. So in a situation like this, because this may be her first time there, she's not familiar with the policy, I would have made an exception for her and went on and enrolled the student. Okay, I don't know who in the office she actually dealt with. I didn't see anything saying she dealt with the principal. Don't know the ethnicity or race of whoever called the police on her, but I don't think it should have gotten to that point. But however, I do understand the need to have a dress code there for parents coming into the school, not pulling up to the school, letting somebody out the car, but actually coming into the school. The Houston Chronicle, HoustonChronicle.com, had a good article on this also from April 22nd, 2019. HISD principal sets dress code for parents. HISD principal sets dress code for parents. Okay, let's go quickly to the phone lines. Let's go to, I think this is Wadsworth, line 1. Wadsworth, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Because there's a thing that happened. I want to continue talking.
All right.
So when the people, when people vote for 2020,
Yeah.
when they vote for the next president, because you got the Republicans and you got the Democrats, in your opinion, because this always happens, because the Democrats always took advantage of the black vote, and then the Republicans, the reason why Trump got in there is because the Republicans use black people like their cars and
Thank you for calling
people
910. Can I have a name, please?
they use the black figures.
All right, John,
to
thank you
get
for
black
calling.
votes.
Put you on hold, all right?
But I want this opinion. If we ever get like a black party, will that black party can help support their own people?
If we ever get back a black party, will that party help to support our own people?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your call. All right. If we ever get back a black party, I'm not sure which black party you're referring to. Basically, at this point, the most important thing for African Americans to do right now is put together a comprehensive African American agenda presented to all the candidates, Democrats and Republicans. Okay, that's the most important thing to do right now, and assess what happened the previous 8 years. Assess the policies that Trump has been reversing. Trump has reversed over 100 policies that President Obama put in place. Trump is attacking the Department of Education. He has Betsy DeVos there. Betsy DeVos was just grilled by congressional leadership in congressional hearings dealing with $7 billion in cuts to from the Department of Education. So you have a number of different attacks. You have attacks in the Department of Justice. You have attacks in the when you deal with the Consumer Financial Bureau. And what Trump has been systematically doing is putting people in charge of these various departments that are at odds with the department, with the existence of the department. Okay, so he put Mick Mulvaney over the Consumer Financial Bureau. Mick Mulvaney wants to destroy it. He puts Ben Carson over HUD. Ben Carson didn't know anything about operating HUD. He puts Betsy DeVos over the Department of Education. Betsy DeVos basically wants to destroy public schools. She's a huge advocate for charter schools. We saw what she did here in Michigan, and at the same time we see that she is very lenient on predatory colleges. In the Obama administration, President Obama put a number of predatory colleges out of business and put restrictions in for remaining predatory colleges because they were having a pattern and a history of targeting African Americans and Hispanics, getting them to take out exorbitant loans, student loans, then not properly placing them in jobs that they got the degrees and certificates, etc. for, and then they're stuck with these student loans and end up defaulting. So under the Obama administration, you had a loan forgiveness program that was put in place for students who were victimized by predatory colleges. Betsy DeVos is trying to block that. At the same time, when you look at the fact that African American women carry the most student loan debt, on average $30,400 when they leave a four-year institution. When you talk about student loan forgiveness, that disproportionately positively impacts African American women and their families. And at the same time, we know that African American women, it takes them on average 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white male makes in 12 months. So August 2nd, 2019 was known as Black Women's Equal Pay Day, because African American women on average make 63 cents for every dollar that white men make. So when you deal with a policy like student loan forgiveness coming from the Department of Education, that has a positive impact on African American women's economic conditions as well as their families. Okay, when you look at a policy like Senator Elizabeth Warren is proposing for student loan forgiveness for about 43 million people who have student loans, that will have a huge impact on a lot of African Americans' financial outlooks. Okay, so but right now the most important thing for us to do is to study the issues, study what happened the past 8 years, understand the policies that Trump has been attacking from the Obama administration and reversing from the Obama administration, understanding how Trump has nominated I think it's over now 150 federal judges, and he's changing the landscape of the federal bench. He's nominated either 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 5 federal judges. These are lifelong appointments, and he's nominating very young, ultra-conservative white males to be federal judges. Okay, this is on top of nominating 2 Supreme Court justices. Okay, and then we also, and then when we talk about the presidential election, we have to also understand that we have to vote for members of the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. So even though Democrats took back control of the House of Representatives, which they should, and they're in control of all the committees, including the House Judiciary Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, the House Finance Committee, that Representative Maxine Waters chairs. But the U.S. Senate is extremely important also, because the U.S. Senate confirms not just cabinet positions, not just the Attorney General, as we saw with William Barr, he was pushed through, not just Supreme Court justices, as we saw with Brett Kavanaugh, but not just the department, not just the Secretary of Education, like we saw with Betsy DeVos, but they also confirm federal judges as well. So a lot of times the hearings for the federal judges, that doesn't get televised as the hearings for the Attorney General does. Okay, so all those things are extremely important. Okay, let's go to line 2. Let's go to John. John, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from the east side of Detroit, Michigan.
All right, go ahead, John. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for the information and knowledge. I want to ask you, I'd like to see the women's college students read that 400 page that you're talking about.
The Mueller Report?
Yeah, I'd like to see the women see what kind of information they can give out about that report. And it'll be very exciting to see them to read it and read it. So that they got more patience, more time to do, especially African American women. And they said that, well, the people said that Trump lied about this thing that guy with North Korea. They said the same thing that Ron Reagan said. They said that he did give that guy promised that guy money and so forth for releasing that guy and so forth.
Yeah.
That's what
Otto Warmbier. Otto Warmbier.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that Trump sending mixed signals about that he did cooperate and said that he was going to stop that guy with the $2 million and so forth to release that gentleman that was passed when he came back to the United States. He passed. They said that people was investigated, but they said that Trump was telling some type of way about that.
Right.
You know, because it didn't sound right. So I just wanted to express that to you. I don't know if you heard about it and so forth.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Well, okay, then. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Okay, man. All right, thanks. Thanks for calling. All right, let's go to Mike, line 3. Mike, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
10, can I have a name, please?
Yeah, Mike in Ann Arbor. I like that premise. One of your earlier callers comes. Let's just get rid of all the, the political obfuscation and just, let's call it the white party and the black party and see how that goes.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mike. Let's go to Wilson, line 4. Hey, Wilson, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Good evening, Mike. I'm calling from Detroit.
Okay, go ahead.
Mine is mostly just a couple of comments.
You said yours is what? You said yours is what?
What I have to say is basically just a couple of comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I am always amazed at what I hear by way of politicians in general.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the Republicans, that we are a land of law.
Yeah. Especially Republicans, yeah, until they want to break them. Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
No one is above the law.
Right.
So I want, how do they try to explain, they've tried to explain the fact that why Trump has not been indicted.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't indicted by Mueller.
Right.
Because it is obvious that he has broken the law consistently.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And if you go back and you look at President Obama, they almost wanted to impeach him for wearing a tan suit during Easter. You remember that?
Listen, not only that, they would create situations with Obama and blame him. Let me give you a for instance.
Right.
He went to the Congress to get an AMF to fight ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't give it to him. Then they blamed him for ISIS increasing in size.
Well, not only that, man, I remember when President Obama was being blamed for stuff that happened before he even took the oath of office, before he even became president. They were blaming him for stuff that happened in 2007. If it's just something bad happened, just blame Obama. But then, good things that President Obama did, Trump takes credit for, and then people. So Trump wants to talk about the economy and 6 million jobs created. It's like, wait a second, man, you've had about 104, 105 straight months of private sector job growth. Trump acts like that all started with him. No.
And he is not. And Trump has not passed. He has not one piece of major legislation. Not one. The tax bill was Paul Ryan. He has not one. But I want to get it. I want to mention Watergate. Well, first of all, one of two comments.
Okay.
You know, Trump. I mean, Michael Cohen is in jail for a check that Trump wrote.
Well, I don't think he's going to jail yet. He's going, but he's been convicted.
He's on his way.
Yeah, he's been convicted. Yeah, he's been convicted.
And lastly, for Watergate, I mean, we always hear people speak about Watergate, but there's been a guy who's been lost in Watergate. I never hear people mention his name.
Frank Wills. Frank Wills. Yeah, Frank Wills. Frank Wills. 24-year-old security guard. I talked about him earlier this week, man, when I did my broadcast and talked about Watergate. Yeah.
Glad to hear it, Hotep.
Yeah, but you're correct about that.
You always hear about Ehrlichman, Dean, Mitchell. You hear about everybody, but who really brought Watergate to the forefront.
Right.
And this guy, and I'm not blaming just he never worked again after Watergate. You know.
Well, he had some jobs, but his employment was not steady. He died at 52 years old. He died broke.
Had in abject poverty out in the woods in South Carolina in a shack with no running water, no electricity.
Yeah, North Augusta, South Carolina.
I knew one job he had.
Yeah.
After Watergate, he had a cameo appearance in all the President's Men.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing. But I was really more so than just white America, Sean. And what hurt me is that nobody. I mean, I'm talking about affluent blacks didn't get this guy a job. I mean, it was horrible what happened to Frank Willis, man.
Frank Wills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is even when I look at MSNBC today and I see Nick Ackerman, I see Jill Wine-Banks, they were former Watergate prosecutors. I've never heard them mention Frank Wills. Go ahead. Yeah.
They tried to erase him from history.
So the reason why, if it had not been for Frank Wills, who was a 24-year-old security guard at the Watergate office building, the Watergate complex, if it had not been for him discovering the Watergate break-in on June 17, 1972, Nixon would not have had to resign from office.
At all.
Yeah.
None of it would have came to light.
Right.
None of it would have came to light. Wills went after he called the police. He was there when the police came and put there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he showed them where it was because he was going. He was walking around doing his rounds, and he was checking the doors to different offices. He comes across a door. It has tape over the door jamb, and so then he takes the tape off and checks it, locks it. He comes back around later. He checks the same door. The tape is back there. So he calls the police. The police come and catch the 5 burglars in the act.
In the act.
Yes.
In the office.
Yes.
Thanks to him. And it was horrible what happened to him, man. I mean, really, over the years, I mean, initially after that, I had a major resentment against government in particular in this country. But I mean, I knew that they were not. I knew the government did not care anything about us because, and this is a little bit off the cuff, but this kind of affirms what I'm saying because the Tuskegee experiment had just ended. When Wills busted him, it went from 32, I think, to about 72.
About 73, right around there. Yeah, it ended, and then there was a lawsuit afterwards. Yeah, so it ended about 73. Because it lasted 40 years. It was supposed to last 6 to 9 months, and ended up lasting 40 years.
Yeah, but my point was that proved to me that the government didn't give a damn about African American men in particular.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks for calling. All right. So 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, check out the article from the New York Times. If you saw my broadcast earlier this week when I talked about Watergate, actually it was the broadcast last Sunday. I did 2.5 hours last Sunday, so it's on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. IM HOTEP is on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Go watch that because I went deep into this. Check out the article from the New York Times. Frank Wills, 52, watchman, foiled Watergate break-in. Frank Wills, W-I-L-L-S, 52, watchman, foiled Watergate break-in. This is about Frank Wills passing away. This is from September 29th, 2000, okay? Frank Wills, the night watchman who discovered the 1972 Watergate burglary, which ultimately led to President Richard M. Nixon's resignation, died on Wednesday. He was 52 and lived in North Augusta, South Carolina. Mr. Wills, who struggled with celebrity and joblessness after being hailed as a hero, died at University Hospital in Augusta, Georgia. Friends told the Augusta Chronicle that he had suffered from a brain tumor. Now, Frank Wills was a 24-year-old security guard at the Watergate office building in Washington, D.C. He was working the midnight shift on June 17, 1972. He discovered tape over a lock on a basement door, and thinking some worker had left it to make it easier to get in and out, he removed it. On another inspection round, he found the lock taped over again and called the police. The locked doors turned off. So the police locked the doors, turned off the elevators, and started checking darkened offices. About 2 a.m. at the 6th floor headquarters of the Democratic National Committee, they found 5 men: Bernard L. Baker, Virgilio Gonzalez, Eugenio Martinez, James McCord Jr., and Frank Sturgis. As Frank Wills put it in a 1997 interview with the Florida Times-Union, quote, "When we turned the lights on, 1 person, then 2 persons, then 3 persons came out, and on down the line," end quote. The 5 men were arrested for what Ronald L. Ziegler, Nixon's press secretary, tried to dismiss as a quote-unquote third-rate burglary. But we understand that the first article of impeachment was obstruction of justice for Richard Nixon, because Nixon tried to use the CIA to get the FBI to back off of the Watergate investigation. Okay? So just as Nixon was forced to resign August 9, 1974, after he was reelected November 1973, he was highly popular. Most Americans were against impeachment. Articles of impeachment were drawn up because of the Watergate hearings, and then the Nixon tape, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling 8-0 that Nixon had to turn over the tapes to the prosecutor. He was forced to resign from office. Republicans told him, "Look, we've seen the evidence against you. If we have to vote on this, we're going to vote to remove you from office." It was overwhelming. All right. Check out the article from Washington Post. A high school's new dress code bans leggings, pajamas, and silk bonnets for parents. April 24th, 2019. This talks about, they cite the Houston Chronicle. Houston Chronicle had a big article about this. As the Houston Chronicle first reported, one high school principal warned parents earlier this month that they will be turned away if they show up at their child's school wearing hair rollers, leggings, silk bonnets, or any other items on a list of banned clothing. Principal Carlotta Utley Brown is trying to set standards. When you have low expectations, when you have low self-esteem, you have low standards. Low standards give you low expectations. Low expectations give you low results. Okay, so she talks about how they're preparing the children for a bright future, and they need the parents' help in setting a good example for the children as well. The announcement followed a widely publicized incident in which a prospective parent was turned away from the school for showing up in a t-shirt, dress, and headscarf. Once again, under those circumstances, I think the parent should have been allowed to enroll her daughter, because it appears she was totally unaware of the rules, and this was her first time at the school, and that dress code was not at that time on April 8th on the school's website. Okay, but Carlotta Utley Brown said, "We are preparing your child for a prosperous future. We want them to know what is appropriate and what is not appropriate for any setting they might be in." Okay, now you had some parents who disagreed with this. Parent Tamiko Miller said, "I'm almost insulted." She's the mother of a student there at the high school, James Madison High School in Houston, Texas. She said, quote, "I really think it was discriminatory, the language that was used. It was demeaning, and I'm African American, and if it's misty outside and I have a hair bonnet on, I don't see that's anybody's business," end quote. That's sleepwear. See, we used to have dignity and self-respect and pride, even in poverty. I mean, so you had one person who was running for city council there who said this is elitism and respectability politics. Ashton P. Woods, who is a candidate for Houston City Council and founder of Black Lives Matter Houston, said, quote, "This is elitism and respectability politics." Quote, she should be fired," referring to the principal. "Most of the parents likely cannot afford to comply with this dress code. This is not 1984, end quote. Ashton should do some research. We've been poor for decades, but there was a respect that we had, and we knew that when we went outside the house, we represented the family inside the house. We knew we didn't walk around with our pants hanging off of our behinds in poverty. We had some standards, but for a lot of people, those standards have been taken away, and so you see people outside wearing house shoes and pajamas and things like this. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, seen, and heard about yourself. So now Zeph Capo, the president of the Houston Federation of Teachers, described the rules as quote-unquote classes. I don't understand how having standards became classes. Quote, I'm sorry, this principal may have plenty of money and time to go to the hairdresser weekly and have her stuff done. Who are you to judge others who may not have the same opportunities that you do? Having a wrap on your head is not offensive. It should not be controversial. Okay? But see, once again, this has to do with having standards and setting expectations for students and parents. Now, at the time, the school had no parent dress code listed on its website on April 8th, and Jocelyn Lewis said said that administrators refused to show her proof that it existed. When she would not leave, she said the police were called. Okay, the school's memo to parents is dated April 9th, the following day. Okay, so check out this article as well as the one from thegrill.com. Look at the broadcast that I did earlier this week. I think it was April 20th. I went deep into this. Houston principal says no more do-rags, curlers, sagging pants at her school worn by parents. And then you had there was somebody else was looking at implementing a dress code. In Tennessee, earlier in 2019, Tennessee State Representative Antonio Parkinson introduced legislation that will require all school districts in the state to come up with a parent code of conduct, including a dress code. He told the Memphis Commercial Appeal newspaper, quote, there are parents who are showing up at schools in the office with lingerie on, with cheeks hanging out, not the cheeks on your face, cheeks hanging out. He said, imagine the teasing and the bullying that comes with that, end quote. Now, if you talk to teachers, you talk to those that work at schools, those that work at the offices who give the passes to parents, right? They'll tell you, you have parents that show up wearing some of everything. So, when your parent shows up wearing lingerie, you think that's acceptable. You know, I don't know if a parent is fascinated with Apollonia 6 or Vanity 6. Or, I don't know what's going on with that, showing up with lingerie. But when you have low self-esteem, that yields low standards. Low standards yield low expectations. Low expectations yield low results. So regardless of your economic income, regardless of your socioeconomic status, we should have some basic standards like we used to have. All right, we're coming up on a break. Listen to 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Michael Imhotep. When we come back, we'll dig into the Mueller Report and the lies Trump has been telling and exposing those lies. 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. We'll be back in a few minutes.
The 910 AM live stream can now be
All right, guys, stand by. Okay, I emailed you 2 clips.
I got him.
Okay, we're going to that. We're going to that first clip here.
The Trump administration?
Yeah.
Or Trump descendants?
There's one from AM Joy.
current events and breaking news on our Facebook page. Search and like 910 AM Superstation on Facebook.
One
Everything exciting and all
AM Joy MSNBC.
AM Superstation news on
What
Facebook
is that?
Like Watergate?
Yeah,
Okay.
the first clip. Yeah, that first clip. Trump administration compared to Watergate by legal expert.
Yep.
Okay, guys, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in, man. There's a short in these headphones or something, man. This connection is too loud.
Chris was using them for his camera or whatever, so he turned up the headphones. So
No, I turned them down, but its volume don't work. I mean, I turned down, it's still coming through here. I don't know what's wrong with this.
There's the Cook Light Air Fryer, an amazing kitchen miracle that uses air to fry instead of oil, so you can have the same delicious flavor and crispiness.
Yeah, these right here.
Using little or no oil. Deep fried taste and crispiness with up to 70.
See, this is turned all the way down, and it's still coming through. Stand by, guys. This is live radio. This is what happens behind the scenes.
Call now and bring the Cook Light Air
getting them on one side too.
Yeah.
Dual tray, air frying mesh basket,
Crazy.
and tongs, and stainless steel extender ring. You'll get it all for 5 easy payments of $29.95. Be one of the first 500 cars and get this 13-piece knife set, a $175 value, yours free. Try Cooklight Air Fryer for 30 days. If you don't love it, send it back.
Was the same thing happen with those over there, with the ones you unplugged earlier?
Yeah, the same thing happened with those. That's why I switched them. I thought it'd make a difference. Let me try these over here.
Been denied credit or with interest rates? A low credit score happens to many of us, and millions of people are victims of incorrect items on their credit reports and don't even know it. That's why you need.
All right, these are better.
Now, our proven process has resulted in.
You get them on both sides?
Yeah, get them on both sides with these here.
I'm getting them on both sides on this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe it's that port.
There's something.
I'll text our
Something going on.
let them know.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
All right. Stand by, guys. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show. Paypal.me/the AHN show. We'll post the information here.
10 seconds.
WFDF Farmington Hills,
Four,
Detroit. 910
three,
AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, April 28th, 2019. And we were off last week for Easter break, but we're back. And in that time, the day before Easter, the day before Good Friday, the Mueller Report was released. This was after Trump's hand-picked Attorney General released a 4-page summary that we talked about here that did not accurately represent the Mueller Report, the 448-page Mueller Report. Okay, so we're going to post the link. Those watching on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, we'll post a link to the full 448-page Mueller Report. NBC News has it on their website. Okay. Then also those in Detroit were mourning the loss of Judge Damon Keith, passed away today, age 96. So a lot of people in Detroit know about that. We've seen it on social media. We've seen it on the news here. I know some of the talk show hosts talked about it in the previous shows as well. So I've been going through looking at the Mueller Report. I've been reading a number of articles dealing with this. I have a ton of articles. And I've seen a lot of coverage on MSNBC dealing with the Mueller Report also. And it goes in detail into how the Trump campaign openly welcomed assistance and benefited from assistance from Russia. Okay, and it goes into detail about how Trump and the campaign were involved in obstruction of justice as well. Okay, so when Trump says no collusion and no obstruction, he's not telling the truth. Because number one, collusion is not a legal term, and Mueller specifically stated in the Mueller Report on page 2 that he was not investigating collusion. He was investigating criminal conspiracy. Okay, and if you look at the actual summary, and I talked about it here on the show, and NBC News has it at their website, all the other Washington Post, etc., they have it at their website. If you look at the 4-page summary that Attorney General William Barr put out on page 2 of that summary, he says that as the report states, quote, quoting directly from the Mueller Report, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Didn't say anything about coordinating with Russians. It just said the Russian government. It didn't say anything about coordination or conspiring with Russians, just the Russian government. But then there's a footnote behind that statement. And then if you look at the bottom, for the footnote, it says in assessing potential conspiracy charges, because they were investigating criminal conspiracy, the special counsel also considered whether members of the Trump campaign, quote unquote, coordinated with Russian election interference activities. The special counsel defined coordination as an agreement, tacit or expressed, between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, once again, not Russians, but the Russian government, on election interference. So they're saying that because, so Mueller's saying they could not establish that an agreement existed. But that doesn't mean that the agreement did not exist. He's saying we just can't find one. So if we actually look at the actual Mueller report, and those watching on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, we'll post a link here. NBC News has it, the full 448 pages. I'm going to get to the printer this week and get it printed up. Also, you can donate to the African History Network if you like this type of information. PayPal.me/the AHN show. PayPal.me/the AHN show to help support the African History Network, helps us support the research, helps us support going to get stuff like this printed up, because this is 448 pages. Helps us finance the show, stay on the air, pay the bills, etc. Do the broadcast throughout the week as well. PayPal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button, and when you order the DVDs, that helps as well. Okay, so very quickly here, and then I'm going to go to this clip, and then we'll go to the phone lines. If we look at page 2 of the actual Mueller report, and we just posted the link here to the Mueller report on our Facebook fan page. We'll post it on the fan page. It's NBCnews.com has it. Just search for read the text of the Mueller report. Read the text of the Mueller report. It's the PDF that you can download. On page 2, Mueller makes it plain, like Malcolm X said, make it plain. Let's see, let me scroll down here. Just a second here. Okay. On page 2 of the report, let's see, let's go to it. Okay, so page 2 is in volume 1. All right, page 2, volume 1. And Mueller says the report describes actions and events that the special counsel's office found to be supported by the evidence collected in our investigation. In some instances, the report points out the absence of evidence or conflicts in the evidence about a particular fact or event. In other instances, when substantial, credible evidence enabled the office to reach a conclusion with confidence, the report states the investigation established that certain actions or events occurred. A statement that the investigation did not establish particular facts does not mean there was no evidence of those facts. Let me repeat. A statement that the investigation did not establish particular facts does not mean there was no evidence of those facts. Next paragraph. In evaluating whether evidence about collective action of multiple individuals constituted a crime, we applied the framework of conspiracy law, not the concept of collusion. We applied the framework of conspiracy law, not the concept of collusion. In doing so, the office recognized that the word, quote unquote, collude was used in communications with the acting attorney general, confirming certain aspects of the investigation scope, and that the term has frequently been invoked in public reporting about the investigation. But collusion is not a specific offense or theory of liability found in the United States Code, nor is it a term of art in federal criminal law. So Mueller is saying collusion doesn't exist when you deal with law. So when Trump says no collusion, Mueller didn't even investigate collusion. So how could you claim the report exonerates you of something that was not even investigated? For those reasons, the office's focus in analyzing questions of joint criminal liability was on conspiracy as defined in federal law. In connection with that analysis, we addressed the factual question whether members of the Trump campaign, quote unquote, coordinated, a term that appears in the appointment order, with Russian election interference activities. Like collusion, quote-unquote coordination does not have a settled definition in federal criminal law. Coordination does not have a settled definition in federal criminal law. We understand coordination to require an agreement, tacit or express, between the Trump campaign and the Russian government on election interference. That requires more than the two parties taking actions that were informed by or responsive to the other's actions or interests. We applied the term coordination in that sense when stating in the report that the investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. But they talk about how the two entities were operating in a mutually beneficial way, and also just because they couldn't find an agreement does not mean one didn't exist. So if we look at the article from the New York Times, the Mueller Report is 448 pages long. You need to know these 7 things from Matt Apuzzo and Adam Goldman. This is from April 19th, 2019, the day after the report came out. And I'll just run through these quickly here. Number 1, Trump did try to sabotage the investigation. His staff defied him. Trump did try to sabotage the investigation. His staff defied him. When Attorney General Jeff Sessions, former Attorney General, told Donald Trump that a special counsel had been appointed in May of 2017, Donald Trump grew very angry. He said, "I'm effed." Okay, he said, "This is the worst thing that ever happened to me." He went on to say, "This is the end of my presidency." Does that sound like an innocent person to you? Is that how innocent people talk? I'm screwed. That's the end of my presidency. If you didn't do anything, would you want somebody to investigate and clear you of all suspicion and all charges? That's not how innocent people talk. Donald Trump began trying to get rid of Robert Mueller, okay, special counsel, only to be thwarted by his staff. In instance after instance, his staff acted as a bulwark against Trump's most destructive impulses. In June of 2017, Trump instructed then White House counsel Don McGahn to remove Robert Mueller, but Don McGahn resisted. Rather than carry out the president's order, he decided he would rather resign. 2 days later, Donald Trump asked another Trump advisor, Corey Lewandowski, to tell Jeff Sessions to end the investigation. Lewandowski did not want to do so, so he punted to a colleague, Rick Dearborn. Rick Dearborn, quote, was uncomfortable with the task and did not follow through, end quote. So they talk about this in Volume 2, Volume 2 deals with obstruction of justice. Volume 2, page 78. Mr. Trump was angry with Mr. Sessions, recused himself. Mr. Trump was angry that Mr. Sessions recused himself from the investigation. Number 2, so many lies, so many changed stories. So many lies, so many changed stories. So one of the unanswered questions of the past 2 years, which helped fuel the FBI investigation, congressional inquiries, and journalistic scrutiny, is why so many people lie, changed their stories, and issued misleading statements. If you didn't do anything wrong, why did so many people lie? Why did so many people lie about Russian contacts? New York Times details how there were 40 contacts with Russians by the Trump campaign and the Trump transition team. Okay, and then so there were in the Mueller report, there were 30 additional contacts that the Trump campaign and Trump transition team had with Russians. It's a total of 140. New York Times lays this out. Going back to January 9th of 2019, news.yahoo.com had an article that they picked up from the USA Today. Trump's team had over 100 contacts with Russian-linked officials, report shows. Now, this is the only foreign country that they had this type of contact with. So the report recaps one false statement after another. Just a few examples. Donald Trump was livid when journalists revealed that he had unsuccessfully ordered Robert Mueller's firing. Trump tried to get White House counsel Don McGahn to say publicly that that was false. Okay, that he tried to get Robert Mueller fired. But Don McGahn refused to lie, saying that the news reports were accurate. Don McGahn said the news reports were accurate. Robert Mueller's report notably declared that Don McGahn was credible. Don McGahn was interviewed for 30 hours by Mueller's team. Now, Donald Trump also pressed the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, to give a news conference about the firing of FBI Director James Comey. The White House press office wanted Rod Rosenstein to say it was his idea to fire Comey. But Rod Rosenstein told the president that a news conference was a bad idea, quote, because if the press asked him, he would tell the truth, that it wasn't his idea to fire James Comey. Now, White House press secretary, the wicked witch of the West Wing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, admitted issuing a statement to the news media, quote, in the heat of the moment that was not founded on anything, end quote. She lied. She got caught lying, saying that on May 10th, at a White House press briefing, that she got numerous calls and emails from FBI agents in the FBI and former agents saying that they supported Trump firing James Comey. She lied, and then when she was interviewed by Mueller's team, she admitted that she lied. That's in the Mueller report. And so April Ryan, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio, said that Sarah Huckabee Sanders must resign. She has absolutely no credibility. Well, we knew that before the report, but this just documents that she stood there and told a bold-faced lie. Volume 2, page 72. No FBI agents didn't actually call the White House offering support for James Comey's firing. So why were there so many lies told? Mr. Mueller can't explain why the stories about James Comey's firing keeps changing. Volume 2, page 77. Number 3, fake news. Not so much. Donald Trump has spent the past 2 years denouncing the news media. He has repeatedly accused reporters of making up sources to destroy his presidency. The Mueller report, however, shows not only that some of the most unflattering stories about Donald Trump were actually accurate, but also that White House officials knew that these stories were accurate, even as they heaped criticism on journalists, including the journalists that wrote the accurate stories. In May of 2017, for instance, the New York Times disclosed that Donald Trump had asked FBI Director James Comey to end the FBI's investigation into Trump's national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Trump tweeted, quote, "I never asked Comey to stop investigating Flynn, just more fake news covering another Comey lie," end quote. Despite those denials, Robert Mueller said in the report, substantial evidence corroborates James Comey's account that Trump did ask Comey to end the FBI's investigation into Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. In another instance, Trump appeared to use criticism of the news media as a legal strategy. He attacked the New York Times article suggesting that his former attorney, Michael Cohen, who was disbarred, might cooperate with the Justice Department and provide information about Trump. The tweet coincided with outreach to Michael Cohen by Trump's associates, and Michael Cohen understood that this was all part of an effort to get him to, quote, stay on message and be part of the team, end quote. That's obstruction of justice. All right, let's go to this clip quickly. This is from AM Joanne Reed, MSNBC, and this is talking about similarities here. Trump administration compared to Watergate by legal experts. Let's go to this clip.
The Supreme Court has just ruled on the tapes controversy, and here's Carlstrom, who has that ruling. It is a unanimous decision, Doug, 8-0. Justice Rehnquist took no part in the decision ordering the President of the United States to turn over the tapes. It's an 8-0 unanimous opinion that President Nixon must obey the subpoenas issued by Special Watergate Prosecutor Leon Jaworski and turn over 64 disputed White House tapes to Mr. Jaworski.
July 24, 1974 marked a major moment at the height of the Watergate scandal. The Supreme Court ordered Richard Nixon to turn over the trove of White House tapes, which would lead to the release of the smoking gun recording. Nixon resigned 16 days later, demonstrating that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States, while also clarifying the limits of executive privilege claims.
All right.
Fast forward to today, where the White House is signaling it will assert executive privilege to block key aides from testifying to Congress about the Russia investigation.
We're fighting all the subpoenas. Look, these aren't like impartial people. The subpoena is ridiculous. I have been the most transparent president and administration in the history of our country by far.
Joining me now is Jill Wine-Banks, former assistant Watergate special prosecutor, Nick Ackerman, also a former Watergate prosecutor, and former Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman, who voted to impeach Richard Nixon, and the author of the case for impeaching Trump. And Elizabeth Holtzman, I'm going to go to you first. Two of the articles of impeachment, you voted for impeachment against Nixon. Two of those articles, one of them making false or misleading public statements for the purpose of deceiving the people of the United States into believing a thorough and complete investigation had been conducted with respect to allegations of misconduct on the part of executive branch personnel. From Article 3, failing without lawful cause or excuse to produce papers and things as directed by duly authorized subpoenas issued by the Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives. Those sound like things Donald Trump has done. How can it be arguable that what Donald Trump is doing in defying these lawful subpoenas is different from Nixon?
It can't really be, and he doesn't really have a leg to stand on. The House Judiciary Committee voted first. The first article of impeachment was basically about the Watergate cover-up. The president covered up the break-in so that he interfered with the efforts to identify the burglars and prosecute them. Second was abuse of power, a whole range of things, including the misuse of his power to cover up the Watergate break-in. And the third was the cover-up in connection with the impeachment inquiry, that he refused to cooperate and gave us false transcripts, deleted transcripts, changed transcripts, and refused entirely to give us other documents. So here we have a president of the United States saying, I'm not turning anything over to Congress. You know, he can't pick and choose when and how he's going to give information. Ultimately, that is such an abuse of power that it becomes an impeachable offense. And the refusal of Nixon to turn over information to the House Judiciary Committee was an article of impeachment. And that's something people need to bear in mind.
Okay, pause.
And Nick Ackerman, ultimately, and that...
Okay, we'll come back to that after the break. You listen to 910 AM Superstation and Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. This is the African History Network show. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right. Turn the mic on.
Free when I need.
All right. And then just back that clip up about 20 or 30 seconds, okay? I'm going to go back to that after the break. All right, how's everybody doing? Who we have here? Is the internet running slowly in here to you?
I'm not sure. The only time I really use it is to pull up your clips. I didn't use the internet today when I got here.
All right. How's everybody doing? We'll be back from break in a couple minutes here. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. We'll also talk about how schools keep teaching slavery and civil rights history in ways that traumatize African American students.
1 minute.
All right. Okay, let's see here. So follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and on YouTube at Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. How much time we have before we come back?
10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, April 28th, 2019. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. All right, so right before the break, we were talking about the Mueller Report. It came out April 18th, came out the day before Good Friday. I did a broadcast last Sunday because we were off for Easter break, but I did a 2.5-hour broadcast last Sunday. Episode of the African History Network show is on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, where I went deep into this, so check that out also. I want to remind you, coming up Saturday, May 11th, 2019, 6 p.m. at the International Institute, 111 East Kirby Street in Detroit. I will be speaking. I'm the guest speaker for the Pre-Mother's Day African Ball, and this is it's going to be a fantastic event. There'll be a dinner, there'll be dancing, African and vegetarian food will be included. There'll be cultural dancers and drummers, African attire, prizes for the best attire. There'll be music performed by the Odu Afrobeat Orchestra. I'll be presenting on ancient Africans in America, as well as great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. Tickets are $40. Dinner served at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6 p.m. For tickets and more information, call 313-717-5578, 313-717-5578, or 313-603-1340, 313-603-1340. And then on Sunday, May 12th, the Mother's Day African Luncheon is taking place. I know Queen Mother Oceandara is organizing this one, as well as the one where I'm speaking. She's the one that asked me to speak, so thanks to Queen Mother Oceandara, Nefertiti El. For the Mother's Day African Luncheon, Sister Nubia Wartford, who's an archaeologist, you heard her a few weeks ago here on the show, she is going to be presenting on ancient Kush, the queendoms of Kush. She'll be doing her fantastic presentation. So this is Sunday, May 12th, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., International Institute, same location. Queen Mother Oceandara will be the hostess. There'll be a traditional African fashion show, live entertainment. The DJ is Eddie Riot, cultural dancers and drummers. And tickets are $25, and it includes a traditional African and vegetarian lunch as well, okay? So for more information, you call the same numbers as well, okay? And we'll get this up on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, let's go quickly to the phone lines. Let's go to Joe, who's been holding. Joe, thanks for calling. Thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Sorry. Mr. Michael,
Yeah.
I know you done switched the topic. I was trying to get in.
Yeah, that's
on,
fine.
I was trying to get in on the last topic. Could I touch on it for
Yeah,
you?
yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. You're absolutely right. Back in the day, you did not come out, black folks did not come out the house looking any kind of way.
Right.
I talked about when you came out the house back then. So this is what I tell black folks, the ones that don't know. Don't be no follower. Followers like a herd of cattle. One go over the cliff, all go over the cliff. Being a follower, somebody come out with old stupid-looking, silly style, you'll wind up looking like a fool and stupid and silly and everything. You know, and a good theme song for black folks right now is the Staple Singers record. Respect yourself, because if you don't respect yourself, ain't nobody else gonna respect you. So black folks, and the way you talk to people and the way you act makes a world of difference. You know, and so like I tell, don't be no follower. still is. You know, now when I was coming, I'm old school. When I was coming up, we had one of them little stupid style, them high heel shoes with the fishes in it. Me not being no follower, I kept to the Stacey Adams and the Stetchers and the Bentley Burks.
Right.
All right, Mr. Michael, take care.
Okay, brother, thanks for calling. All right, and going back to that topic they're dealing with, the principal in Houston, Texas. Also, it's important to keep in mind, now her previous school was Peck Elementary School. She was there for 14 years. And Newsweek reported, Carletta Utley Brown took over this new school halfway through its second semester when its old principal quit. Now, she is the fourth principal in 5 years at James Madison High School. She came from Houston's Peck Elementary School, where she made national news in 2015 when the school got $100,000 from Target as part of its Thanks a Billion campaign during a live broadcast on the Ellen DeGeneres Show. So many people saw her on the Ellen DeGeneres Show as well. And she had a track record of success at Peck Elementary School as well. Okay, and Peck oftentimes exceeded the state standards. Okay, so she's trying to take the James Madison High School to new heights also. Okay, all right. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about the Mueller Report and breaking this down, and I was dealing with this clip I was sharing with you excerpts of this clip from AM Joy and Reed show, and this is from Saturday. I think this one is from Saturday, April 27th, Saturday, April 27th, AM Joy. And this deals with comparisons between the Trump campaign and Trump administration and what's taking place and Watergate, okay? And you heard, right before the break, you heard a former representative member of the House of Representatives, who voted to impeach Richard Nixon, okay? Let's go back to this clip.
Range of things, including the misuse of his power to cover up the Watergate break-in. And the third was the cover-up in connection with the impeachment inquiry, that he refused to cooperate and gave us false transcripts, deleted transcripts, changed transcripts, and refused entirely to give us other documents. So here we have a president of the United States saying, I'm not turning anything over to Congress. You know, he can't pick and choose when and how he's going to give information. Ultimately, that is such an abuse of power that it becomes an impeachable offense. And the refusal of Nixon to turn over information to the House Judiciary Committee was an article of impeachment. And that's something people need to bear in mind.
And Nick Ackerman ultimately, and that is with Nixon actually turning over the tapes, the most incriminating thing, he ultimately complied. Meanwhile, you have the current administration refusing to make administration officials available upon the request or even the subpoena of Congress, saying that one of them, Carl Klein, who's the former director of White House Personnel Security, will only appear if he's allowed to have a minder from the Justice Department, a lawyer from the Justice Department, with him. It's hard to understand how Congress can allow the president to get away with that. Bill Clinton's articles of impeachment included asking witnesses to lie, encouraging witnesses, and this was in a civil action brought against him to be false and misleading, and to encourage his secretary to lie about the affair he was having with Monica Lewinsky. Donald Trump has, according to the Mueller report, encouraged Paul Manafort with dangling pardons in front of him, and encouraged Michael Cohen not to tell the truth to Congress. Your witness.
Joy, I mean, obviously, Congress has got to take a very hard line here. They have every right to get all of these documents and to get all of these witnesses. I mean, starting with the Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, who is refusing to turn over Donald Trump's taxes, even though there's a specific statute that provides that the IRS has to turn that over to Congress. And on top of it, there are good reasons to receive those taxes. One, Congress has the constitutional oversight with respect to the emoluments clause. Donald Trump can't be accepting monies at his hotel from foreign governments without the approval of Congress, and it also relates to their impeachment power. So I believe Congress has to take a very hard line, and if they have to, they have an inherent authority to actually hold people in contempt for not producing documents and not testifying. And if the Secretary of Treasury does not produce those income tax returns, he ought to be held in contempt, and he ought to be put in prison, and he ought to stay there until such time as he produces those tax returns. And the same goes for these other witnesses.
And Jill Wine-Banks, you know, just on that very point of Democrats really needing to enforce their own power in order for their power to mean anything, a couple of members of Congress, David Cicilline and Robin Kelly, talked about what punishment should accrue to people who refuse to comply with congressional subpoenas. And let's take a listen.
Congress has the responsibility, and I would say the obligation, to hold individuals in contempt who do not comply with a lawful subpoena, who do not produce documents, and we ought to be prepared to imprison them.
We need to do what we need to do, whether it's subpoenas, hearings, fining people, and if we have to put people in jail.
And can you just explain, Jill Wine-Banks, how that practically would be done? Because Congress obviously doesn't have law enforcement power. How would this idea that if they don't comply, they go to jail actually carry out in real time?
It's a very tough question, because they don't have the authority that the Department of Justice has, and that we know that the Department of Justice will not exert. They will not bring a criminal contempt case against any of the witnesses who Donald Trump is instructing to not cooperate. This is the beginning of the end of democracy if we do not have three separate but equal branches, if Congress doesn't have the power to enforce. In the end, during Watergate, Richard Nixon actually did believe in the rule of law, and when ordered by courts to comply, he did. This president has said he will not, and it is a very scary thing, and that leads us to what can Congress do? Obviously, impeachment is one thing they can do, and I would say in terms of the process, it's not a binary choice for them between impeach now or never. It's not a binary choice between how they do it. It's not a binary choice between their constitutional obligation, between their moral imperative to take action against a lawless president, and between the political reality that he will not be convicted even though he would be impeached. It is a choice of process, and I would say that what they need to do is to start educating the people who will then rise up and say to their representatives, I've seen the witnesses. And that's not Barr and Mueller. That would be people like McGahn who have actual knowledge, who can be judged for their credibility. I want to hear them say and see how they come across. In the same way that we heard Cohn, who went from being a disbelievable fixer to being a pretty credible witness in the minds of people. So we need to have the fact-finding hearings to educate the public, and then we can move to what is the next step. Is impeachment the right thing? Even if he won't be convicted, he would have that asterisk after his name saying that he had done something wrong. We can't let this go unpunished. We can't let him skate away and get no consequences for it. Bill Maher said last night if Dostoevsky hadn't been the author of Crime and Punishment and it had been Mueller, it would have been crime and no punishment. We need to take action.
Yeah,
Okay,
and to the
right
point
there.
of the Bill Maher show last night, Adam Schiff was on.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Okay, this is Adam Schiff on Bill Maher. Go ahead and play that.
So I'm going to come to you on this. Let me play what Adam Schiff said in that very vein that Jill Wine-Banks was saying. And this is the binary Democrats have put themselves in. Take a listen.
If we don't impeach him, that sends a message that this kind of conduct, this obstruction of justice, this kind of willing use of the help of a foreign adversary, all the lies and cover-up, that this is non-impeachable. At the same time, if we do impeach him, and he is acquitted as he would likely be acquitted, then the message is those are not impeachable offenses. At the end of the day, Bill, there's only one way to deal with this problem, whether we impeach him or not, and that is to vote his ass out of office.
All right.
Well, so is that a real binary? Because the reality is only...
Okay, so check out that full clip because it's about 20 minutes or so. MSNBC.com, AM Joy. But Jill Wine-Banks is absolutely correct because this is exactly what happened in Watergate. It was the Watergate hearings that were televised. Millions of people watched it, and that changed the minds of people because Nixon was highly popular, and he was reelected in November of 1973 by a landslide. Okay, so she's absolutely correct. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has basically been saying that the investigations need to continue and there need to be fact-finding hearings. That's what Jill Wine-Banks is talking about. Because those will be watched just like the Michael Cohen hearings were watched by millions of people, just like the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings were watched by millions of people. These will be watched by millions of people. It'll go the videos will go viral on social media. Robert Mueller talking about he was leaving it up to Congress to dealing with impeachment. Him saying that he was operating based upon the Department of Justice memo stating that you can't indict a sitting president. If this had been anybody else, they would have been indicted. Okay, so you got to hear from the witnesses. The witnesses as well as Mueller and Attorney General William Barr. Need to hear from them also under oath. Okay, let's go quickly to the phone lines. Let's go to Larry, line 1. Larry, thanks for calling. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm going to Sandusky. Michael, listen, I often get frustrated, as probably many others are and have done, in regards to this whole issue of impeachment of Donald Trump. Michael, unfortunately, with the way that our laws are so vague and how they speak on certain subjects and they speak vaguely on those particular subjects, the truth of the matter is, Michael, we were all duped when it came to our civics classes, where we were taught that there were 3 equal branches of government, and those equal branches of government had the same types of powers. The truth of the matter is that the executive branch of government controls all other branches of government to this point. That, as Richard Nixon simply stated that if a president committed an act, whether you consider that act a crime or not, if the president did it, then it is justified. It's no crime. There is no. He said that a president, in his powers, that he had the supreme power over all other branches of government. That was then, and without Republicans siding with Democrats against Richard Nixon, Nixon never would have been impeached. And the same thing now with Donald Trump. When Donald Trump has stacked the Supreme Court, he has the majority of the Senate, and he has over 2/3 in the House. There is no way that we're wasting time to do that. And
wasting time to do what? Wasting time to do what?
We're wasting time talking about impeachment. We're wasting time talking about these issues that they're trying to go at Donald Trump about getting his taxes. We're wasting time.
It's not a waste of time. That's the job of Congress. They're there to do oversight. That's their job. That's not a waste of time.
That may be what I'm saying, Michael, is that very well may be their job. But the truth of the matter is, with the basis of the Constitution and the powers of that, we are now trading upon waters now. That Donald Trump, if he wants to, no matter what his acts are, no matter what the offenses are, unless they have 2/3 in the House and have the Senate, and also if he decides whatever acts that he's done, if he's done it, he done those acts while president, and that there are no crimes with that, there will be no one convicted. And we're wasting time in that. What we need to be doing is trying to educate the American people about the acceptance of our Constitution and what we need to do to overthrow that. Unless that happens, we're going to remain with Donald Trump or those like him.
That's why you need the open fact-finding hearings that are televised, like Jill Wine-Banks was saying. That's what happened in Watergate. That's what the turning point was in Watergate. That happened after Nixon was reelected in a landslide. He was reelected November 1973. He was highly popular most Americans were against impeachment, but after the Watergate hearings, after seeing the evidence come out, hearing it for themselves, they changed their minds.
Well, Michael, unfortunately, unless we get the control of the American people, and we then put that fear into our elected officials, which we do not have, and currently, Donald Trump is probably facing a situation now where he's going to be reelected.
Why?
With all the things that's there, Donald Trump will be president again.
Why?
Because we are issue-based politics. We're going on issue-based politics. We're trying to do things. We're trying to interpret the Constitution with none of that power. It's in the hands of the American people currently. Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
All right, thanks. Go back and read the U.S. Constitution and understand the Article 1 and Article 2 powers of Congress, especially the House of Representatives in Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, which deals with impeachment. But Jill Wine-Banks, who's one of the prosecutors for Watergate, is absolutely correct. Everybody go and watch that entire segment. She's absolutely correct. You have to have the open fact-finding hearings that are televised, and as this information come out, as the facts come out from the witnesses, that will change the tide. You already have evidence from the Mueller report seeping out, and you see Trump at like his lowest polling this year at 36-37%, because facts from the Mueller report are seeping out. But most people are not going to read 448 pages. But that early nonsense that Attorney General William Barr was saying at the press conference he held a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours before he released the Mueller report, people see that was a lie. Okay, so let's shift gears because we're running out of time here. But once again, the name of this clip from MSNBC, go watch the full segment. This is from April 27th, 2019. Trump administration compared to Watergate by legal experts. Trump administration compared to Watergate by legal experts. Also, keep in mind, Trump lost the popular vote by 2.8 million votes to Hillary Clinton. So this is about voter turnout. This is about voter turnout. The Democratic base is larger than Trump's base. This is about voter turnout. Okay, so Vox.com had an article, and I've been talking about this for a number of months, even going back to last year. Actually going all the way back to February of 2018, dealing with how schools systematically keep teaching incorrectly the history of slavery in schools across the country. And also they are incorrectly teaching the history of the civil rights movement. So Vox.com had an article from April 19, 2019. Schools keep teaching slavery and civil rights history in ways that traumatize black students. Okay? And they talk about a number of different instances. But one of the recent ones was from Arizona. You had a African-American mother who posted on Facebook that her black son, a 9-year-old third grader, had participated in a classroom simulation in which he had to, quote, walk through his class as his teacher and fellow students yelled at, humiliated, and berated him during a lesson on school segregation, end quote. She was interviewed by the Arizona Republic. Remember, Arizona was the last state to recognize the federal holiday of Dr. King Day. That was Arizona. Remember that. Do you remember Public Enemy had the song By the Time I Get to Arizona? That's what that was about. Now, this incident took place in early April 2019 at Basis Phoenix Central, BASIS, Basis Phoenix Central, a charter school for students in kindergarten through 5th grade.
Thank you for calling.
The Arizona Republic reports that the simulation was meant to reenact the moment when the Little Rock Nine, a group of African-American students that integrated Arkansas's Little Rock Central High in 1959. This was after the Supreme Court decision Brown versus Board of Education. So they were reenacting when they first entered the school, and were bombarded by slurs from white students and protesters. Now, the boy's mother, her name is Claudia Rodriguez. She explained in an April 12, 2019 Facebook post that she found out about this reenactment after another parent told her about it. Claudia Rodriguez added that when she told the school that putting her son in that position was offensive and hurtful, educators reportedly told her that, quote, there was some educational value in this incident because it started conversations in the homes of the other kids, end quote. Yeah, but what about the humiliation to the student? Now, if you read this 52-page study, and I don't understand how educators haven't read this and don't know about it, and I'm not an educator in that sense. I don't work in the schools, but I know about this study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery, and it's a 52-page study you can download from splcenter.org, splcenter.org. It documents how the history of slavery is incorrectly being taught in schools across the country, and it gives numerous recommendations how to correctly teach, or more correctly teach, the history of slavery. And they did a survey of 1,000 12th graders all across the country, and they found that only 8% of 12th graders surveyed knew that slavery was the central reason why the Civil War was fought. Only 12%. 68% of 12th graders surveyed did not know that it took a constitutional amendment to formally end slavery. That was the 13th Amendment, ratified December 6, 1865. Okay? Less than 1 in 4 students, or only 22%, could correctly identify how provisions in the U.S. Constitution gave advantages to slaveholders, like Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, called the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787, which incidentally did not state that slaves were 3/5 of a human being. That's a total misunderstanding of that. We had Dr. Paul Finkelman on the show going back to January 13th, 2019. We broke that down. You've heard me talk about that previously to that. That's a total misunderstanding of the U.S. Constitution. Okay? So, and one of the things they talk about in this study is how teaching, how having slavery enactments and mock slave auctions and things like this, role playing, how that is can traumatize students, especially African American students. They tell you don't do that. Okay, so going back to the article from Vox.com, Claudia Rodriguez said, quote, his humanities teacher found it wise that in order for the students to understand what black kids during those times experienced, that she would have my child, who is black, walk through the classroom as she, another teacher, and the remaining 27 classmates yell, humiliate, and berate him, she said. Okay, she said that the school effectively prioritized other students, quote, at the expense of my child's emotional well-being, end quote. Now, it was also stated that they did not yell racial slurs at him, and they were not allowed to use derogatory language or racial slurs. It's still a bad idea. Okay, so when you if you go on through this article, they give some other examples of lessons dealing with slavery and history gone wrong, and then they talk about the 2018 report from the Southern Poverty Law Center, Teaching Hard History of American Slavery. And they talk about how it took a comprehensive look at these issues, surveying students and teachers across the country, reviewing popular textbooks, and looking at state standards on education about slavery to better understand how slavery was being taught in schools. The researchers found that schools teach about the history of slavery and civil rights in woefully incomplete ways, and that as a result, students cannot answer basic questions about the cause of the Civil War or other related history questions. One of these people is this idiot named Donald Trump, who praised General Robert E. Lee. General Robert E. Lee was a traitor to this country. You don't have a sitting president praising a traitor to this country who committed treason against this country and took up arms to fight against the Union to maintain slavery. This is what this white supremacist president did. He's a traitor. Not only that, when you study General Robert E. Lee, and there's an article dealing with there's an article from the Atlantic called The Myth of Robert E. Lee, something to that effect. In that article, it talks about how Robert E. Lee was against Confederate monuments. Okay, a lot of people don't know this. Robert E. Lee was against Confederate monuments. He was against using the Confederate flags, and there were 3 different Confederate flags. He was against using the Confederate flags after the Civil War ended. Okay, the flag that people call the Confederate flag is not the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. Okay, so check out that article from theatlantic.com as well, because Robert E. Lee was a brutal slave owner who committed treason against this country, but then he was against Confederate monuments, including the one that the Unite the Right rally tried to ostensibly tried to save in August of 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia, where Heather Heyer was killed. So the Southern Poverty Law Center report was especially critical of the use of simulations in the classroom, arguing that they are, quote, not shown to be effective as a learning strategy, end quote. The report noted that simulations, quote, can harm vulnerable children, end quote, and that the trauma of such lessons is compounded for black students. How is it that you got teachers with degrees and teaching certificates that haven't read this report and don't know it, and I don't have that, and I read the report and know this? I don't understand this. And it's free, splcenter.org, search for Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Instead, the report encourages schools to teach hard history, a history that does not shy away from difficult discussions of racism, white supremacy, policy, and the ways historical injustices have influenced modern racial disparities. And as I've said before and will continue to say, if we're ever going to get reparations, first we need to understand how to make a legal argument for reparations, because a lot of these arguments are not legal arguments. We need to read the U.S. Constitution, especially Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution, which stipulated that the international slave trade had to be outlawed, and the earliest it could be outlawed was in 1808. So March 2nd, 1807, the U.S. Congress passed a law to ban the importation of Africans coming to this country as slaves. That went into effect January 1st, 1808, as stipulated by Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. But if we're ever going to get reparations, America needs a massive history lesson. African Americans don't understand the history of slavery or history in general. White people don't understand the history of slavery and history in general. So when you try to get laws and policies to address conditions that were created by laws and policies, you get pushback because all these people are ignorant of history and is done on purpose. So America needs a massive history lesson. Okay, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. My DVD lectures are there. We'll get up the flyers about where I'll be speaking Saturday, May 11th at the International Institute for the Pre-Mother's Day African Ball. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me, customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or call 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. You can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or click on the yellow donate button at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I have to get out of here, make way for Pastor Mo. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
That's the number of free phones.
All right, guys, I got to get out of here. Okay, I'll check out your comments later. Okay, talk to y'all later. Peace.